Temporal Hijinks in my Star Trek? It's more likely than you think. After an amazing trial episode last week, we return of Strange New Worlds Season 2 and an episode in which Lan are going to the past. Yeah, basically to ensure that the future survives. We love references to previous Star Trek and other alt timeline James Tiberius Kirk and a whole lot more. It's a weird episode, stick with us. But how was yesterday and yesterday and yesterday? Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, when I held up to previous Strange New Worlds episodes and Star Trek time travel episodes overall. Let's take a look. Spoiler warning, this is our full review of Strange New Worlds' third episode of Season 2. As such, you have been warned. If you've not watched this episode, turn away now. Hats off to those people who managed to watch it earlier this week when Amazon Prime Video and Paramount Plus accidentally leaked it. Well done everybody, we're going so well at the minute. Welcome to Trek Central, I'm your host Captain Jack and let's get straight into it. But before we do, we know we always say this, make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss a video from a team here at Trek Central. You can keep up to date with the latest Star Trek news, lore and more. As always, please let us know if you're talking about Star Trek, comment down below your thoughts on the latest episode or anything at all. We're also streaming weekly or if not daily over on twitch.tv/TrekCentral. Come follow us there if you want to miss gaming streams and anything else going on. I'm on there once a week maybe, and I think Ensign Adam's on there. It's fun, come watch. Okay, hit it. This episode was a fun one to watch. The characters are great and the interactions were amazing. But unfortunately, I did feel like the story of this was let down. It did need some sort of more refinement before it could stand toe-to-toe with other episodes like this, such as City on the Edge of Forever. But what exactly do we mean by that? Well, let's talk about some of the moments we did enjoy from this episode, and then we'll talk about things that didn't really work for us. La'an was the centre point for this episode. Strange New Worlds usually centres around one specific character for an episode, but what made this one different was it was very much isolated to La'an. This might have been intentional given the story we're being told. La'an feels isolated from the rest of the crew and doesn't get on too well with people, which this episode made us feel not by having too much interaction with the crew of the Enterprise. Now this is good, but also bad. One of the great elements of Strange New Worlds is the assembled cast. They are great, and though this episode is effectively in isolating La'an from a crew, it's little too effective in isolating us the audience from the other characters that we love, for example Pike. It's its own detriment at the end of the day. Despite this, Christina Chong puts her all into the emotion acting of La'an, and we get an extremely good semblance of what her character is feeling. There are times we know an entire conversation of what La'an is going to say, just from a cut-off word, and what is done, and it's done very well. The biggest element of this episode was her dynamic with the one James T. Kirk, which in my opinion does work really well. Speaking of Kirk, we got a first look at James T. Kirk last season during the finale, where we were treated with an alt timeline Kirk, captain of the USS Farragut, who many have remarked did not feel like Kirk. Though we get enough alt timeline Kirk in this episode, captain of the USS Enterprise, way before his prime and technically a different man altogether, it feels very much more in line with the Kirk we know, but still some uniqueness which Paul Wesley embeds in this character and makes it his own. A little element I found really cool about this Kirk is this alt timeline Kirk was born on the USS Iowa, while the primetime Kirk, as in our Captain Kirk we know, was born on Iowa in Earth. This being what differentiates them and why the alt timeline Kirk is not familiar with Earth or revolving doors. It makes sense, and it's how La'an in the end finds that the timeline has been fixed when the actual Lieutenant Kirk is born in Iowa on Earth. He just works in outer space. Personally, I actually enjoy this Captain Kirk of the United Earth Fleet USS Enterprise. Seeing him in the past quickly adapting to the scenarios by getting money and food and whatnot was cool to see. Him winning money by playing chess because he used to do the three-dimensional chess was a nice beat and connects to the original series. It was also nice to see him wrestling with the idea of erasing his timeline for the sake of the prime timeline, knowing his brother, Sam Kirk, is alive in our timeline, but not on his own. Then again, he won't be alive in our timeline for very much longer, so... With regards to George Samuel Kirk, there is a little retcon here which works so well. When Sam Kirk was first introduced, many people had an issue with this, because the way he was introduced as Sam Kirk. In the original series, George Samuel Kirk was said to only be referred to as Sam, with people like James Kirk calling him Sam. Kirk even brings this up saying, most people call him George, with La'an replying say, nobody calls him George. From a sibling perspective, this is great, with James Kirk thinking something of his sibling while the opposite is true. It's nice to see how much Sam does mean to Kirk, and Kirk even being willing to sacrifice himself for a timeline which has his brother alive. It makes his inevitable death hurt even more. The Temporal Hijinks this episode were interesting to say the least. They were enjoyable to watch and piece together, as our characters did the same, but with most time travel episodes, there was a lot of plot convenience when we look at the sort of upon the fact. It really let this episode down the amount of convenience there really were. We have these temporal Romulan agents trying to track down the cold fusion reactor in Toronto. Okay, cool. The Romulan's plan is to wait till La'an and Kirk find the reactor, but surely they could have just had a device to find the radiation, right? I mean, they had a whole ass starship. Anyway, another element which the episode sets up is the time fighting back. We've had this previously with Star Trek Voyager, with time being described as having moods. What is interesting about this episode is that it sets up even more of a will of the time. Something even modules can't really predict. Even if something is removed from the timeline, time will try and reinsert it. Confusing, I know, it's timelines. Go watch Doctor Who.
Wibbly wobbly, timey wimey.
We actually have a Doctor Who channel, by the way. So this is how the episode retcons previously established things in an interesting way. The cold fusion reactor is run by the Noonien Singh Institute for Cultural Advancement. Khan was originally meant to be active in 1992, but time was reinserted him here. This episode, as well as Picard Season 2, sets this up. Project Khan was similarly spearheaded by Adam Noonien Singh and developed in Canada. So yes, Khan is now Canadian. Damn you Canadians, I'm joking. This also means that what is set up in Strange New World Season 1 with the eugenics wars are mixing with World War III. Essentially the timeline is correcting itself both from a canon point of view and also from a, just a general point of view. Speaking of Khan, the extremely messed up element of this episode is La'an basically has to make a very powerful choice for her character. All her life, Pelia made assumptions about her from her last name of Noonien Singh. She had the opportunity to essentially get rid of that by killing a young version of a man who started it all, Khan Noonien Singh. I was going to be very worried they were going to somehow redeem Khan himself, but it's a point to make. Khan is not a monster because of his augments, he is a monster because of the choices he made in later life. Nobody is born of sin. However, he is Khan, and we know he'll become the infamous Khan, even La'an knows that. La'an has to save Khan, even if that means he will go on and genocide people and commit mass atrocities. This is really a tough choice, because she is saving the man who caused that and not someone else. Compare this with Edith Keller in the original series. Kirk has to let her die in order to ensure America joins the Second World War. Edith Keller had the best intentions, but has to die to make the right thing happen. Khan does not have to have the best intentions, but he has to live to make the right thing happen, and the eventual course to create the Federation happen. This reminds me more of the plot of City on the Edge of Forever, of Kirk and Spock having to make sure JFK is assassinated. I feel like these concepts don't work when it's direct in causing history, but is more indirect. Making sure Edith Keller dies is a good example, and helps separate it by a degree to the death that is caused for the right reason. A very nice inclusion in this episode is a lot of Pelia. The episode starts with La'an inspecting Pelia's possessions, believing them to be illicit, with Pelia dropping a little bit of info that she ran an archaeological department in the past in Vermont. Now with La'an stuck in the past, she goes to Vermont and gets the help of an engineer from Pelia, only to realise she isn't an engineer. This also goes back to plot convenience, by the way, just how convenient she remembered she was there. Now, this is where the episode does get a little bit interesting with time travel, because it seems like this event always happened, as Pelia became an engineer thanks to La'an. However, we know that timeline changes, so this episode tries to have both a bootstrap paradox and a reactive timeline at the same time. Lots of time. It was performed well by Carol Kane when La'an finally returns to present day in the outfit she wore when she met Pelia all those years ago. With Pelia knowing exactly what La'an just went through, it's clearly being written on Pelia's face. I don't think they'll talk about it at all, especially as La'an is wanted by the Temple people, we're calling them that. Temple Investigation Department. Temple Affairs. Temple Big Cheese. It is nice to see that side of Pelia, and she actually has stolen these items during her time on Earth. I just hope that having antiques gets brought up again in a future episode, and maybe one of those is valuable or related to a plot. Now, the Romulans being the villains here are interesting. It seems to be set after the Temple Wars with the Romulan time agent said, but with time, who knows when they started or when they finished, because it all could be confusing. The episode also seems to suggest that Chernobyl and JFK were also done by the Romulans, but as it was told by an unreliable narrator, we can take that as gospel and not confirmed as fact. It's fiction, we made it up.
It's totally made up. Pure fiction. It's fiction. It's fiction. We made it up.
Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow is written by David Reed and directed by Amanda Rao. Overall, this is a fun episode to watch, but if you think back on it, there are a lot of conveniences in the story of this episode which really detract from the overall plot. Kirk actually being a highlight of the story was not what I expected, and Paul Wesley was able to bring his own to the role, which is fantastic. Now, the writing of the episode was not the best, with a lot of conveniences to get the plot going to where it wanted. It felt very much like the end of the episode and the main plots were planned out, and it was just roughly decide how they get between said plot points. The world building and continuity in the episode was also quite hit and miss. There are some fantastic elements like everyone calls him George to this is what was meant to happen in 1992, but how some of these elements interact with others was not thought out extremely well. After rewatching episode 2 of the season and coming to this one, it just doesn't hit as hard. Ad Astra per Astra was Metallicus in what it was trying to achieve, and this felt less so. It'll be interesting to revisit this episode and see how it holds up as we watch it more throughout the week. We've only done our first watch through it at the minute. The creators of the show said they were taking some big swings in this season, particularly when it came to continuity and canon, and an issue with that is they sometimes miss. Last episode very much hit on target, but this episode not so much. This isn't so much of a bad thing, as it should be welcome for them to try new things and push the envelope in what Star Trek can say and do. But even so, on that front, this episode is very safe in what it does to a degree. We also have the issues of a similar story being done fairly recently in Star Trek Picard Season 2. That's our crew waking up in a strange new alternate reality, not new world, and having to go back in time to stop this fork in the road. It had Romulan temporal agents and geneticists, even a reference to Khan. This episode could have done a more excellent opportunity to overlap and interconnect those two episodes, maybe even having a cameo from Brent Spiner. Now that would have been pretty cool. Possibly having another supervisor on Earth who mentions a previous Romulan supervisor on Earth was killed, and the only connection is Khan. We could even integrate Gary 7 maybe, that could have been an interesting way to do things. Okay, so Star Trek Strange Worlds has new episodes releasing every Thursday on Paramount+. Go and watch those, they're pretty cool, or if you're any luck they might get leaked early on. Thanks Paramount. Can't wait to see what you do next. So, what do you think of the third episode of Season 2 of Strange New Worlds? As a time travel, yesterday's Enterprise kind of story, how did it hold up altogether? Would you prefer to remain on the United Earth fleet of the Enterprise, or have more temporal agent situations? I really want to see the US's relativity, now that would have been cool. Ultimately, let us know your thoughts in the comment section below, because if you're talking about Star Trek, then we would love to hear about it. If you want to keep up to date on all the latest Star Trek news, lore and more, then make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss a video from the team here at Trek Central. You can also follow us on social media or join our community Discord server. For now, I've been Captain Jack, thank you very much for watching, and we will see you throughout the week with more Star Trek video content. Live long and prosper, my friends. Goodbye.